there. In 3, 2, 1. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Curious Observer podcast, where we're exploring thoughts and we're just wondering what the heck is going on and sharing good times with a good friend of mine, Jesse Davila. Fun facts about Jesse. We recently met because of I'm a teacher, and his brother's son is my student. And as soon as you guys found out that I was in a band called Volcan, pre-lockdown, of course, right? We're playing often. And as soon as you guys found out about that band and where we were playing, man, you guys were always showing up and we're big fans. And it was so great to see you guys and with the kids and the family. You're welcome to share more about yourself, Jesse, to our family and friends.
Well, yes, I am 39 years old, and I met Mr. Hernandez through like he's saying, through my brother and my nephew. Mm-hmm. Well, my brother started letting us know that he was in a band, so we will go out and support because we have to support our local artists. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I love music. I love like cumbias and all the different genre of music that comes together. And what do you call it? So we were out there.
And I know that you have a background in security, man. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, I've been doing it for 4 years, and I've done a lot of concerts like EDM. I've done Mala Luna that just tends to be here in San Antonio.
And didn't you get to also meet? Oh, I'll let you tell. I don't want to take away your thunder.
I ended up going to do Shakira's concert. I met her. I met Luke Bryan, country. I've done a lot of different artists. I've done Luke Bryan here in San Antonio. I did.
And just so you know, ladies and gentlemen, Jesse is someone when you look at, you're like, I hope he's on my side because I don't want to mess with that guy.
Yeah, but I am a gentle bear.
Yes,
I'm mean on the outside, but
and you don't want to be in the other side. You don't want to be not on the.
Exactly.
Yeah, dude. And let's thread the needle here, if we may. I know you've mentioned that you've gotten to, because of security, got to meet to know Joey Diaz. Can you tell me more about that?
Yes, when I work also at the Aztec Theater, he was one of the artists that I got to meet that was performing at the Aztec.
And just so you know, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know Joey Diaz, let's just say he's regarded within the apparently within the comedic community. I don't know how to say that. Comedy community, as one of the greatest comics, and certainly very raw. Would you say?
Yes. He is just straight. I guess some people have to be straightforward because he's been, what I've read on him, he's been in prison.
Yeah, he has a wide variety of experiences.
He's done his time and he's shared everything. Even on his podcast, if you go to join his podcast, he's just raw and straightforward.
Yeah.
He doesn't sugarcoat anything.
Nothing. And especially through the lens of a comic, it's such a treat to witness the stories and the way he tells it. So if you're interested in raw, dangerous, and comedy, Joey Diaz is certainly your guy. And man, so how'd you get to, what was that like? I remember you were telling me a story about.
It was really like a treat to meet him because I would have never thought it'd be in my life because I've done my own share of bad things in the beginning, but
in the journey of maturation.
Yes. And like I told you, I've had a path that I was following that wasn't in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up following people that I shouldn't have. And
Mm-hmm.
I learned, and then I ended up meeting other people that were in the church, part of the Knights of Columbus, and
Mm-hmm.
I started hanging out with them more. And then I joined the Knights of Columbus.
Boom.
And I ended up more
It was a
facing.
big U-turn.
Yes, it was like I told you, I had that fork in the road,
Mm.
and it led me down the right path when I
Mm-hmm.
ended up. Well, that fork in the road was me joining the Knights of Columbus and following my journey with God,
Amen.
and that
That's
was that was my path.
And along the way, the collections of experiences and perspectives that allows, and something that uh, they came to mind when you've told me that story, especially in the curious observation of today's unfolding of 2020 into what kind of era are we in, and you certainly have a very unique, very very curious and because of your honest heart, the lens that you bring from your eyes through this journey that we all have. You were mentioning in terms of like the culture of today socially, like just stepping out into the street before the internet, and like is how much of a night and day difference it today is than it was. I think you were saying the 90s, where
Yeah.
would
Well,
would you would
actually, like for me, since I was born in '81, we had
mm,
that outside. Like we didn't have the social media, internet at that time. So it was like everything we were doing was being outside, getting dirty, like normal kids.
jumping into a bit of dirt? Vámonos.
Yes, yes. And then playing football. We grew up we didn't have big yards. So we grew up playing football, tackle football in the street.
Ah,
So we were really going extreme
and
in
I have
football.
it's I appreciate you sharing that because it makes me recall of my early childhood. I would say my generation, I was born in 1990. When you say that, immediately my brain goes to when I would visit my cousins. We live close to each other, and in that particular block, everyone was related to each other, and the roads have yet at the time have yet to be paved. So it was dirt roads, right? And man, I remember racing up and down, like we would play racing, seeing, how do I say, with no shoes, no socks, barefoot, vámonos. We're racing, and I remember my feet smacking against the rocks and remembering in my head, like, oh, what's the big deal? It's just, I just have to avoid the big rocks. But, and we would, like you said, tackle and tag and wrestle, just like nothing, whatever. So tell me more.
And then on that part, we ended up getting our talking about paving roads.
Mm.
Well, our road got torn apart, just made into mud. Like they took off everything and turned, like when it would rain, it would be a mud pit. So we
Oh
would be
gosh,
playing football out there still. We would still
it's
have
probably
fun.
better because the way you would land is like, yes, it's epic.
And I've ended up in my own neighborhood, they ended up putting up cement mailboxes because I've ended up taking out mailboxes with my chest or with like running into mailboxes when we were young. Like
Yeah, we're wreaking havoc.
when you would play tag, it's like you would tag somebody, but you still had the momentum of going forward. So
Yeah,
you would get
anything in the
tagged, and
way,
it's still gonna
it's
get.
it's like, oh, excuse me, even though
Yep.
it's all destroyed. Yes.
And I'm a big guy, so I'm taking out something.
Goodness, man. You know, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this question. In especially with how culturally through your eyes, how people communicate and with information, right? Uh, how I'll say it like this: how prevalent was news distribution? Like, okay, what's the latest update? What's going on? Uh, how how present was that? And if it was it through radio and or television? What comes to
It
mind?
was it was both. Like probably when we would get home at 3, it would be early in the morning would be TV for waking up for with the news, and
Mm-hmm.
then weekends will probably be radio because we'll be in and out
Ah,
outside most of the time. We would be doing stuff, so it would be radio that we would listen to. But most of the time, like it would be television in the morning, radio in the weekends. Sometimes at 5 o'clock, we would catch the news because you would have it. You would have
there's
it.
the program.
Yeah, you would decide what you wanted to watch because you had cartoons for the little
Yes.
ones, and then you would have the news in between that time that you're watching cartoons and stuff.
Right.
So you would
Interesting.
it would be like your parents would be like, it's time to change it to the news. So
Right.
it
I
would be
remember that
time
too.
for
Yeah.
them. It would be that would be their time to watch TV.
Mm-hmm.
And then whatever shows later on that would come out for us to
Mm.
watch.
And would you say like the hot topics of today, right? The big P word, politics. Certainly there's an observation of a polarity, right? And I know we've talked about, how weird it looks. And to some extent it's like how fast that occurred. It's like uh what's going on here? Uh, have you seen this before? Has it through your eyes? Has it been similar like this? Uh, Maybe I'm not phrasing the question eloquently, but I'm curious what comes to your mind.
Really, at the time, like right now, it's all been more like what I've seen in politics. It's totally different than what it was in back in the days.
Hmm.
Like it doesn't. I never saw it as much as I'm doing now, and the
Hmm.
negativity that comes out. It never happened back in the 90s, late 80s. It
Hmm.
wasn't like that when I was growing up. I
And what was
never
it like instead?
you there was no I would say it wasn't that much negativity.
Hmm. It
There
was more
was
informational.
yes, it would be you would be getting information, not like one hating the other. It was all information about what they wanted to run and help on, like their pros and cons, of what they wanted to run, what they're helping for. Like the
Right.
Republicans were doing this, and then the Democrats will be putting, I want to fix this, this, and this.
Hmm.
Now it's all just arguing. There's no formal politics, no formal way of talking.
Hmm.
Like the last couple of debates, all I it was just big, like the presidents. They were
Hmm.
just bickering. It was like one sided. Like
Hmm.
I felt when I saw it, I was like, why do I even want to watch it? It's just all arguing. Nothing's getting like talked about.
And the good thing, the what comes to mind for me on that point is maybe that's the best part, to be able to see how reflective of our culture is. Hey, look, even up there, there isn't much, clarity, processing, an allowance for each other's to be each side to be expressed. And so it's quite that's interesting that you say that. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. I wanted to get to something that you mentioned before, and I thought I'd invite your perspective in this lens. You mentioned in the 90s that so culture in San Antonio, right? You're born and raised in San Antonio?
Yes, sir. Yes,
So
sir.
born and did you ever leave San Antonio, or you've been here the whole time?
I left for like 8 months to Arizona,
Oh,
but then I
cool.
came right back.
By the way, what's in Arizona?
My uncle, when I left the first time, I went to go help my uncle start his company,
Oh,
his
cool.
painting company. So I was going with him to help him uh, empty out the trailers, start loading the
Yeah,
house,
help out. Yeah.
help out the house. And then I started working with one of his friends that he used to live in Florida, but then
Hmm.
he moved from Florida to Arizona because his friend moved from Florida to Arizona. So
Okay.
it
So there's a
was,
lot of movement, so
yeah,
it brought you
yeah.
back. Okay. So I remember you mentioning culture for you. You remember vividly that when you would step out of the house, that there was a clear sense of, okay, I need to touch base with this kind of gang and this kind of gang and this kind of gang, and it was very much that was a reality in your stomping grounds, walking around. Uh, Tell me more. I'll leave it there.
And it was where my neighborhood was like I had two gangs. I had
No más.
well in that area
Yeah.
because going from my house going to the corner store that was about say 4 blocks from my house, that
Mhm.
was like the Hispanic gang site.
And how old were you
So
again?
I was like what 12, 13,
Oh dang!
about
You don't
in
know.
those in that young age where I could have gone that direction,
Mm-hmm.
but I steered myself of staying away from all that because
Wow.
the only reason was because going to Rin, I had another gang on the other side. So I made friends with both sides for me to get a clear path to go to school and
Dang.
then for me to walk to the store.
And just to go to the
So
store. Wow.
just to go to the store
What
or
was
go
that
visit.
like? So for you to say that, for you to go to the store, as minuscule as it may seem, oh, I'm just getting my groceries. What is it like for you to have to eat? You have to be cautious, right? What really is
Yeah.
the cautious? Can you paint the picture for us? Like what does that mean?
Well, for me, it was that I had to just have eyes in the back of my head. I felt like it was constantly like my head was on a swivel because you never knew what could happen from the house to the store because you had
Hmm.
all the Hispanic gangs in that side by the store. So in the whole neighborhoods that I was walking through, I had different
And what was
gangs.
okay? So like you're walking through, right? Paint the picture for us. I'm very curious because
Where
what it
like
makes
for
it like
me,
for like what? Let
for
me say this real quick. When I was a kid, I remember I didn't experience that the magnitude of what you're saying, but I do recall as a kid living in a barrio and Cantaranas. Shout out to Cantaranas. I would walk down the street and you don't want to make eye contact. If you make eye contact, it's always like, "¿Qué pedo? Huh? Hey,"
yeah.
and it's like fire starts to light up. I'm like, whoa, just don't make eye contact. You look straight, you go to where you're going. And but I was younger, I was just a kid. Just a kid. Was it like that? Was there more around it?
Well, for me, it was like I had going to school, like elementary, high school. I had my enemies within the school, that went from elementary to junior high.
Hmm.
So the people that went to the two schools lived in the neighborhood. So it was really that for me, I was picked on in
Mm.
high school. So I was an easy target.
And
But then,
were you shorter? Is that why or what? Nah.
no, I was bigger. I was more chubbier. So I was picked on. Then I started being more of a person that started learning that I had to defend myself. So I started learning how to defend myself. So when I was walking to the store, I had one of the guys that went to with junior high with me that saw me. So he pulled over. Well, we got into a scuffle going to the store.
Oh,
So
you just
this
pulled
was
up.
yes,
You just walking up. Hey.
that's why I say that I had to have my head on a swivel because
Mm.
I I wasn't into fighting. Then I started getting I had to defend myself one way or another, so I started learning from TV from other people
Oh,
how to defend
pre-internet.
myself. Yes, that's why. It's like the TV was the learning tool to the internet now.
And you could not rewind unless you had the VHS to be able to record it. And then,
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
you know what? Real
And
quick on that, just I don't want to deviate too much, but I want to just whenever we get a chance, uh, I want to recall what that was like when you the first time we recorded something. But we'll go back to that. So the guy pulls up, and then what?
it was just there. It was
At that time, were
I
you prepared?
yes, I was. I was more where I knew some like having my head on a swivel, it was like enough to where it was gonna give me a heads up that I am gonna have to fly or die, one or the other.
Yeah.
So
Dang.
I'm flying.
And how old are you
So
then?
and that's when I was like, yeah, I'm 14, 15 in that time when that happened. And I had to really I had to really figure out if I wanted to go. I had to figure out what I had to do because somebody else was in the car. So I had to figure out if I wanted to fight one or fight two, or be able to take one out and be ready for the other one. So
Yeah, yeah. Like if he was
it,
gonna
it
wait it
is
out. Yeah, yeah.
exactly, and it's hard being in a neighborhood like that because I was Hispanic. So if I would go to school, the other gang was all a black gang. So it was very scary that me walking to school was me having to really tell them or try to fix it to tell them that I'm not part of a gang.
Oh, because they would suspect like, oh,
Yes,
there was a
because
scuffle with with a Hispanic gang, Latino gang, and they're like, and they look at you and they're like, hey, you look Hispanic, y'all got in a scuffle with us, so we're gonna take it on this guy and we're gonna figure out which gang he belongs
exactly.
to, and you're like, actually, I'm
Yeah.
just
And
going to the store.
well, for me, the other gang was going to school to Rin. At the time, it was like E.T. Rin was on Acme Road, so that was all a different gang.
Hmm.
So I would have to figure out a way to go through to go to school. We were dead smack in the middle. Our street is like in the middle of two rival gangs.
Hmm. Hmm.
And one of the rival gangs lived on our street. So you would hear gunshots and all this other stuff at
Okay.
at the time. You know what I mean? At the
Yeah.
time, and it's now. I feel like gangs have started to dissipate because
When at what
most of
point
the
did you notice that disappear?
probably in the early 2000s it started because most of the people that I knew were in prison or dead.
Mm.
Just being blunt and honest with you, it was
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
It was hard to it's hard to say that, but
No.
most of them are in prison
Yeah.
and doing life sentences
Mm.
or 6 feet under.
Mm-hmm. And
And
you know, for you to have
go
observed all that, oh, go for it.
and it's just an eye opener.
Yeah.
It's an eye opener. But like I told you earlier, I did go down the bad path. But me knowing that this, I could be going to jail or to prison for doing what I'm doing. That's why I ended up changing my
Mm.
whole my whole mentality and
The whole shift.
everything
Yeah.
to
A
a
reshaping.
positive.
A reshaping of decision processing and justifying and and then just watching those outcomes take their turn on their own. That's
Yep.
beautiful, man. You know, especially from those experiences that, you know, like, you know, we're all born into this flesh and it feels like as though we land wherever we land. uh, and it's like, okay, how do we figure this thing out? Okay, what's the language that we have? Oh, it's a blend of English and Spanish. Okay, there's a label called Latino or Hispanic. Okay, whatever. And along the way, there's all these pushes and pulls that are faced and seem normal, and we can trace them to uh, all kinds of depths that we didn't have to be confined to, whatever even that means, right? Uh, and but at the same time, we can see where one set of patterns of thought can shape a certain outcome, which you shared that you were able to forecast what that looks like based off of what you've seen and the consistency of all of that, and you're able to recognize a whole other set of patterns and wonder, well, it's certainly not that outcome, and I'm willing to take that shift and let that shape. Beautiful, man. And you know, let's bring. I want to tie that into what you were saying about learning the. Let's bring this to technology. When you're learning, you know, in terms of sources of information that, like, what is today the internet at the time was television. Do you remember the first time you recorded on VHS, and what was that like?
It was like kind of hard because you're learning the process on how to tape yourself, how to tape on a VHS. Because sometimes it's like, well, you have to hit this button and this button to make it record, and then the show's already started, so you missed a part of the show. So
Oh,
it
and
got
it's especially like if you accidentally erase, like record over something that you didn't want to erase. So if anyone who is born before 2000, VHS, if you're not familiar with what that is, I love saying that, by the way. Is that great to hear? Like you can feel the cultural shift. It was not that long ago where CDs were
wait,
normal.
wait, no, you got it's further back
Oh,
because then you actually start off with the 8 track. You start off with the 8 track instead of CDs and cassettes.
so you dabbled with
So
that.
you're going further back.
Did
Yes.
you dabble with that?
Yes. We had we had a system like a record player, and it
Mm-hmm.
had an 8 track. It had, instead of having a cassette player, it had an 8 track player. And it's like a little box, and you would put it in, and the music would come out.
Who would have thought all of that would take its shape into 2020 with what we look at, you and I know as YouTube, what you and I and anyone watching this as Spotify. And before that, it was, you know, it was considered illegal, you know, streaming music. You know,
Yep.
I think it was it Metallica that sued Napster, uh,
Yep.
and because there was a, I don't know the logistics on how that works, but I know that every time a streaming service not really a service. It was considered illegal service. It was like Kazan, Kazan Light, Metamorphosis,
Yeah.
all that. And then here we are with Spotify. And oh my goodness, how there's all these parallels with how we've watched culture take its shape. I wonder, this is just me, just the access of information. I wonder what comes to mind for you based on what you said about, when you would step out, you had a sense of like, okay, which gang territory am I in? And now that's not, how much of a parallel would you say with technology and how that's dissipated? What would you say, especially like of the kids that have grown up, watching that? What comes to mind with what I just said?
Well, most people, like my mom, my uncle, your record players are actually now coming back.
Nostalgia.
Before, like in 85 to 2005, I think it is, you started not seeing that many record players. You couldn't even find the needles for record players anymore. So from I think it was 2014 to now,
Uh-huh.
they're starting to come back,
Yeah.
because a lot of people, when I was growing up, they were listening to vinyl. They were still in the vinyl.
Oh, when you were growing up and you were watching them listening to jams, right?
To what they call old school now, it was in at the time when I
was
was
hot.
growing up. It was happening. Like when you told me when you sent me the message of Little Joe.
Yes.
That's why I told you, yes, I listened to him, because my uncle played sax for a band, and that's what they would play.
What band?
Like all that. It was. I don't know. I have not never.
If you get to ask, please let me know so I can let my friends know. By the way, at the time of this recording, this is the 20th of October, and at this moment we're in the middle with. So I play in a band like 45. You can think of it like the next generation of the momentum that came from Little Joe. Two particular musicians, Mike Torres III and John Ontiveros. A shout out to y'all. They essentially toured with Little Joe for 10 years, maybe more. If they're welcome to correct me. And so essentially the momentum that had been learned along the way, these guys are incredibly talented, and the opportunity that has arose, whatever the word is, pardon me, is so it's Little Joe's birthday recently, and so yeah, we're doing this major collaboration tribute to Little Joe, and it's such a historical project that is occurring. Imagine here's a man who essentially awoken a kind of people that we can recognize as a group of people, Tejanos, right? Chicanos. And that's just so crazy how the music that this man wrote and the bands and musicians that have come through under the umbrella of Little Joe has manifested into all kinds of momentums of styles and stories and musicians. And well, there's a major collaboration with the people who have played his music, who as of right now, the names that I think I'm allowed to say, I can't say too much. Poncho Sanchez, which by the way, he's from Laredo. Also, shout out to Laredo. And if you don't know Poncho Sanchez, high world-class caliber musician. I think as of right now, I could say at least we're in the process of confirming Intocable, Los Lobos. I'll stop there. I don't want to get too excited. So I'll leave it as a teaser. So follow La 45 we're in the middle of that project, and it's so crazy. The reason I saw that is because everything you're saying about technology, here's a man, a living legend. It's just a blessing to be able to share such a marking in history together. And, que sigue los bendiciones con el movimiento, ¿verdad? With the
But
movement.
it's always, have you noticed that when people play his music, it's changed a little bit because they add their own little flair to their music?
Yes.
To his
Latin
music?
Breed, by the way, also is involved. And they have everyone that we have recorded, they have the versions.
They use the original, but they tweak it a little bit to make it their own style of music.
Yes.
So I've noticed that his music is playing. It gets played by a lot of musicians, but then they add their own little probably
signature
guitar, acoustic guitar version, or something to it to make it their own.
Yeah.
Not all his.
Yes, and it's all stemming from, once again, Little Joe.
One
I
person.
think his the full name is John Hernandez. So in my head, I'm like, "Hey, primo, qué tal?" Right? Technology. Wow. What? So when it comes to that, what kind of things have been coming to your mind in the observation, and how? By the way, have you seen Social Dilemma?
No, I haven't, but I send you one. You know how I was talking about the Bible? Well, I
Sure.
send you one that says the story of God with Morgan Freeman. He goes
I have not seen it.
all over the countries learning about the religion or the stemming of
This is on Netflix, right?
Yes, what they believe in God. What their God is.
Ooh.
So what I was talking to you, I think what I was telling you about came from this Netflix show.
Go for it. Yeah.
It was like I was telling you about from the beginning. There was the Bible. How many versions are they?
Oh yeah, and
Now,
how much influence it's
how
been
much
stretched.
added to it, and what is real and what is fake. And I think looking at this documentary, it would tell you what is real and what is fake.
Okay.
So it I think that's where I got it from. It was running through my head all like it was always running through my head before I saw this.
Okay, so you feel like you feel like there's been a sense of awareness of there's more to this, as wise as this text is, and I can only imagine for it to have arrived into our breathing fabric of peoples right now, this generation of peoples, reading something that was written from generations, a whole other depth of fabrics of peoples ago, generations ago.
Yes, exactly.
And so it's like, well, there has to be a mystery to these words. And then you watch that, and then so you're saying that it affirms.
Yes, most of it falls into what the ideas that run through my head of some of it's fake and some of it's real. And how much of it's more real than being fake from the original.
Right.
The testaments and all that.
Well, the thought that comes to mind when you say that is, how will we remember history of what's been happening, what's happening today? Technically, whatever is being written is going to stay, even though it's not true. Or it was perhaps told it was true and then found it was not true. But it's written, and what story will carry over into the next generations, right? And that raises the question, well, what really do we know of history as we think we know it? And certainly we think we know it.
See, because even with what I was talking to a friend of mine. He was telling me if you read the Aztec calendar, if you break it down and
I don't know how to read the Aztec calendar. I wish I
well,
could.
well, no, but if people that know how to read it will break it down, it ends on 2020.
Oh,
Like there was
just like they said in
something.
2012. What are your
No,
thoughts on that?
but there was
Mhm.
something that was gonna happen in 2020, and look at what's happening now with
True.
the pandemic. That was
And
gonna
the
cause a downfall.
information turmoil,
Exactly, it was gonna cause a downfall, but then it was gonna be better
a
after.
reshaping,
Yeah, it's another reshaping of
kind of like what you
beginning something
experienced.
new. Yep.
Perhaps I wonder what comes to mind on what you would like to see and the challenges that may be faced in such reshaping.
Well, I feel like it's gonna. I don't know. I just like my right now with everything going the way it's going. I feel like we're gonna break down within the United States.
And
You
what
know,
does that
it's
mean?
not. It's like it's not gonna be a war between another country and the United States. It's gonna be the United States fighting against each other.
So
You
do you,
know,
would you say that you feel that there could be, excuse me, that there is a sense of tension within the country to the point of concern, like, oh, whoa, 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 like
yes,
almost like the way you felt on the streets as a teenager.
yes. Because look at what's happening with all what's going on now. You have riots, you have riot like what's going on, what happened with the riots, with all the
Mm-hmm.
everything that's going on. I feel that you have to have your head on the swivel.
Is it me,
Even
or did you also hear of when the lockdown was happening that prisoners were being released from jails?
yes.
I'd like to know more information personally. I haven't done my due diligence on this bit, but I leave it as a question. Anyone out there, you're welcome to, uh, you know,
Yeah,
leave it
because
below here,
like I think what
like
you're talking
where
about
that happened.
was the ones that were on like the final steps of getting out, not prisoners that have long sentences. These were the ones that were prisoners that were like stepping out of
Okay, I'd like to know
on the
more about
on
this.
the
Yeah.
yeah. It was something like that. I think it was
Okay.
because of how the pandemic was going
And
on, and they were
and
breaking.
because of the information world we live in, it could also, I'm just being silly here, maybe hyperbolic, maybe I'm being over cynical, but I don't have the information, but we can question, especially with going back to, the framing of news. Who knows, maybe it is that what you said, that, oh, it's only those who are on the tail end of their time and they're being released, or that's the story that's told and we can let go of it, and it's actually a lot more than just
Yeah,
or maybe it's including, it's like you can say a matter of fact that it is, there are people that are being released at the end of their sentence without mentioning perhaps that other people who are not at the end of their sentence being released also. So, I'm very curious. I haven't done my due diligence. I'm just raising the question. Anyone who is very curious to dig into that, perhaps we should. You tell us if you want us to dig into that and uh,
and
thread
it's
off of that. You're welcome
and
to mention that below.
it might be something good to find out because if that was happening, then how many people are out here that are murderers, are what I mean,
Yeah.
rapists, whatever, are
Hence the
out here.
protection that people ought to consider of themselves.
Exactly. And that's why I say sometimes you do have to have your head on a swivel
Mm-hmm.
because you don't know who's out here, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And like I've always for me, being a security guard, it's kind of hard. It's kind of scary
Tell me more.
because I'm always in different locations. And sometimes I'm doing foot patrol in a building, outside a building. So I have to walk the whole perimeter. I don't know this homeless person, how what his mindset is, how he is,
Or what he has
like
that you can't see.
like, is he a mental patient or is he a violent person? If I would go up to him and tell him, I'm sorry, you have to leave the property, I just don't know that.
Is he
So
cooperative?
my head is always, or my brain is always thinking ahead to my next step.
Mm-hmm. On the what? It's
Because
like chess. Like you want to, all the possible outcomes. Should it be a cooperative situation? Have that ready on the outcomes on like the protocol for it, and if it's very uncooperative, okay, well, what does it take to approach that situation? Or if it's like a middle ground, maybe he's trying to test you and you're trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I make it clear that I mean business and I'm being serious with what I'm saying? Okay, fine, big guy, I am out of here. That kind of, so yeah, I can
and
only
then
imagine.
you have to figure out,
I'm a little guy, so
am I gonna have to am I gonna how am I gonna pursue this? Like, meaning that my step one is to go up and talk to him, maybe stay a distance from him
mm-hmm.
in order to give myself time. If I'm going to have to go hands on, at least I have that time to put my hands up and get ready to
Right.
go hands on. So it's those little steps
Mm-hmm.
that you think about before you get up to a person, and
Well,
for women it's a whole different. Like for me, usually if there's me and a female that do security in a building, I would take the outside perimeter and let her do all inside,
mm-hmm.
because it's better for me to get hurt outside than her getting hurt, maybe getting worse,
Mm-hmm.
injured worse than I would.
Yeah, you're a big guy. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you're to look at this guy right here, you'd be like, Andre the Giant? Dude, heck yeah. Well, let me poke your mind here in this direction. What helps you recognize within yourself where, in terms of information and news, how do you recognize within yourself, okay, this is clearly a one-sided view and that's all I'm gonna like receive, or that's all I've been doing, and then the second question would be, how do you allow yourself to detach so that you can gain more perspectives from different sources, even though you probably don't even agree at all, but at least give yourself that willingness. How do you navigate those waters?
What I use, I tend to, I guess, talk to people, and like, I
Wait,
have
yeah,
friends.
people still talk? Yeah.
And that's the problem. That the whole internet, cell phones, everything. Nowadays, you just go to Google and Google it, but how do you know if that's true?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
With that said, I was watching the video you sent me of that gentleman from Google that
Oh, yes. So for those who are not aware, Project Veritas, people have different views when that word is uttered. There's two views that come out. Is, oh, it's that organization. They're a right wing propaganda organization. And then the other eye that view, when they hear that word, is, here's an organization that uses undercover reporting, and essentially people from organizations such as Google recognize behaviors, patterns, or business that perhaps isn't, they recognize within themselves, hey, you know what? That's bias and that's not fair. It's clearly one-sided. the standard of criticism of applied to one view or one person is not being applied to the opposition of that one side and one person. And there's a clear censorship of this side, and there is a clear promoting of the other. And so those people essentially, make themselves available to Project Veritas and essentially record conversations with people who are, in the upper levels within the organization, not just any rinky-dink position. And I don't have the names and positions off the top of my head, but if you're to, search them, good luck finding them if they haven't already been censored. Certainly, that's something that is being faced. At the end of the day, it's like, is there a willingness to view? And if there is not a willingness to view, what does that mean of us? Even if we don't agree with them, even after watching them, we still are skeptical. And you know what? That's perhaps the best position to be, to view anything, no matter what side, with a degree of skepticism, a detachment, but at least a familiarity of, well, that could be. But I'm not even buying it, because who am I? I'm not a journalist. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a, I didn't make Google. I didn't make these companies. So we're really just curious observers here. So those are the kind of things to me that come to mind in terms of when the word Project Veritas comes to mind. And essentially what happened was there's a undercover reporter sharing conversation with one of the Google, the people that work there, that, let's just say, he was essentially sharing with the reporter the things that were bothering him. And I'll let you say the rest.
Yeah. How?
What came to mind when you watched that?
It was just like, I feel like it's kind of in the wrong, because reporters do that stuff. They go undercover, and sometimes it's not right to do that, because you're dealing with somebody that might be somebody in a company that can lose their whole livelihood on something that you want to come out and do.
So through the lens of caring for that person's individual, for that position that person is in, yeah, it's certainly in the wrong, because it's like, now you're getting somebody fired. And then
you're burning their bridge.
Mm-hmm. Now, what comes to mind on the flip side of what could be in terms of opportunities for that person that got fired? It's like, hey, you're telling the truth. You're being honest about what you're seeing. And sorry you lost, your job at Google. But hey, because you spoke the truth, you shared information to the public eye of something that is affecting the public through their eyes. So it's like perhaps could it be perceived as a blessing in disguise? Disguise as in you're fired, you lost your position in Google, any connections with Google is out of the picture. Blessing, because you did a service, should it turn out to be true what this man is saying, then you know what, this man has integrity, all that kind of stuff starts to come out. So it's like, well, it has to be true then. If it's not, well, I mean, I guess too bad for the guy, because he's lying, right?
Yeah, but I feel like it's, like you said, it possibly a blessing, because maybe another company or somebody else might want to hire him because he's honest and straightforward with somebody, about something that's,
should it turn out to be true what he was saying,
and nobody sees it though, and the only people that see it are the people in the company and the people that are on top of the food chain of that company.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody else sees it on the bottom end.
Yeah. So it's vital that
So it's a possibility that he will be somebody good to have in a company, because he can help you
based on what he has seen.
Yeah, based
His
on what he's
expertise. Yeah.
seen, he can help another company break that mode of the
Uh-huh.
people on top doing that to other people, dealing with that problem, and
Right.
it can fix it.
We certainly would like to think that that would be the case, and
It's a possibility.
if the guy is truly in the position that that Project Veritas is sharing to the public eye that the guy is, then it must. It's just a matter of time now how things fall into place as time unfolds. And if I'll let's I want to conclude. I want to say thank you for your time with a question that perhaps something that comes to mind from within your heart that someone can find within themselves that along the lines of what we just said. And once again, before I ask you this question, uh, where can people find you on Instagram?
Instagram, I will tell you right now. Hold up.
It's Iceman or something like that, right? You just created it?
Yes. No, I've had it. I've had it
Okay.
for a while. Let me get
Okay.
it. Let me make sure.
I'll be sure to add it right there
Yes, it's
into the video.
it's Iceman 2022381.
So get all
So
those numbers. I'll be sure to add that right there.
yeah,
Once again, Iceman, what?
022381.
Orale. Now, the question is,
2381. Yes,
who's
sir.
you memorizing that, right? Vámonos. So the question is, what comes to mind if there's people out there that are perhaps, how do I say this? What's something that you can offer within your eyes that helps you sustain a curious lens to observe things, and that helps you catch when you find yourself, I'm following this kind of track of, political viewing, or this side of the track, or when you find yourself, how do you sustain yourself a centered ground, or at least a willingness to detach, and what can you that someone else can find of value through your eyes?
Well, really I really work on like trying to figure out what's like the positives and the negatives of everything that's going on.
Of
And
evenly.
if yeah, evenly. And I try not to really like social media is the most like the social media network is where it's the hardest not to see it or try to stay away from the social media because every time
Mm.
you go into Facebook, you see president, you see the candidates all up there. They're like the one's saying something bad about the other one, and the other one's trying to say something different. So I try to stay as much. It's hard to stay away from social media, but I try to stay away from all the politics stuff on social media as much as I can
So social
because
media, in terms of information, it's a check mark, like, I mean, I'll look at it kind of thing, but I'm not gonna let that be my source of information.
yes,
And you mentioned earlier uh, that you really try to make it a point to talk to people, like actually talk to people.
yes.
And what's that been like for you when you talk to people in terms of information?
Well,
How do you
like
do that?
for me, I guess because I have a friend that I went to a retreat, an Acts retreat with my friend
Mm-hmm.
that we talk about, and I've asked him that question that I told you. What, how far does, what is the Bible? How far does it go, and what is true and what is fake? And I've
Right. So
asked
you
him, and
use the same
he,
kind of lens.
yeah, yes, and
Mm.
because he really taught me, he really guided me more into my faith, because I
Mm.
wasn't one to go to church. I wasn't one to be an active member in church.
Right.
But since I met him, we both do things at church. So he's helped me, and we talk about different things. That's the reason why I knew about the calendar. They asked the
Mm.
calendar about the
Mm.
ending of it, that there was something that was going to go on in 2020. And
Mm.
look at what happened with the pandemic. And
So you're
now,
watching correlation and use. So you recommend talking to people that you have trust and you have regard, that you have respect for, and welcoming what it is that they see through their eyes. And I share that with you. Certainly it helps me. Talking with you and talking with all kinds of different friends that I've been around and that I are close to me. I have respect for and I love them, right? So it's like the receiving of different perspectives and allowing an honest conversation to take place.
and on another note, real quick, that
Mm.
10-minute meditation that you do, it does work.
Oh snap!
It
Oh,
does
tell me
work
real quick. Go for it. Go for it.
because of what you said of how you hear things when you're in your
Uh huh.
meditated state, and it sounds
Yeah.
way clearer. It is true because I could hear when I do mine, I could hear a fire truck, and the fire truck's
Mm.
on Wurzbach, but it sounds like if it's right next to the
You can
house.
imagine it. Everything. Yeah.
Yes, you
When
can.
if you didn't check in the into in your mind into a meditative state, that would just be a blur. But the senses are awoken to the point where it's
Yes,
something. Yeah, it could just be okay. What's the big deal about a fire truck? No, we're missing the point. It's what else could be recognized like a fire truck that is so far away within our own awareness of our within our hearts even. So if for people who are not aware of, currently I'm on day 4 of a 10-minute meditation challenge. Meditation challenge. You're welcome to stay tuned with that on my Instagram. It's Ricky Ray Woo. And essentially 10-minute, I clock it in, clock it out, whatever I observed in that meditation, everything's off. I even have a timer and it rings and it freaks me out because I'm wanting to go longer than 10 minutes. But for the sake of challenge, I want to experience it. And I've been sharing it on Instagram. So Jesse, I'm happy you shared that you yourself are exploring meditation and watching, just observing your thoughts, and shall observations from here on out continue curiously. Is that okay?
yes, sir. And you should. I think our next meditation session should go up at least 15
Woo!
for the next
We
one.
pushing it, ladies and gentlemen.
The
Well,
next week, just give it week by week and see how much we can enter into the
oh,
soul.
I
Open
see
up
what you
the soul.
open up
I've
the
been,
mind's eye.
yep, open up all the chakra levels and let it
Oh, well,
let
now
it
you need to tell
seep
me
in.
about that. I'm not too familiar, but like really, I'm just closing my eyes and let's enjoy the show.
Well, yeah, when you do that, the meditation, it helps you to give yourself energy.
Mm, yeah,
To open up your body, like
because there's a lot of
after
energy that's
that,
just going out, and we can focus it
and bring it
with
in within
like a
your
bird,
own self.
like a bird.
And once you do that, when you bring it in, you feel more energized and more awake when
Mm-hmm.
because you're constantly on your feet, so you have that extra energy when you're
That's
at
right.
work or doing different things.
Well, with
But
ladies and gentlemen,
I
go
can
for
teach
it.
you how to do it.
Thank you for plugging in that meditation because that has been helpful for me. And if anyone finds value in that, then shall the flows of curious observations, how do I say, continue, right? Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Well, good day, everybody. Tenga buen dia.